Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. On December 8th, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor, Franklin Roosevelt stood before a joint session of Congress and asked for a declaration of war. He called December 7th a date which will live in infamy. The vote was 470 to 1. America was in the war. What is less often asked is whether that moment was the beginning of America's entry into the Second World War, or whether the entry had been underway for months, steered by a president who believed it was necessary and who used every tool available to him to make it happen. That question is not a conspiracy theory. It is one of the most serious and most contested debates in American diplomatic history. And the evidence, carefully read, is genuinely extraordinary. Our history brief today is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation series episode in a conversation with the world-renowned author of historical fiction, Robert Harris, about his latest book, Agrippa. Just a reminder that the full video of the interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms. A quick word from our sponsors.
Hey, I'm Dan Harris, host of the 10% Happier podcast. When life gets a little rough, sometimes we feel this overwhelming urge to fix everything, which really is impossible. So I've got a new series coming up called Reset, where we're going to help you find simple, practical, surgical ways to reset key areas of your life. The lineup is incredible. We've got people like Gretchen Rubin, Laurie Santos, Atul Gawande, and The Daily Show's Josh Johnson. 10% Happier with Dan Harris. Join the party wherever you get your podcasts.
This day in history. On August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment officially took effect after being certified by the U.S. Secretary of State, guaranteeing women the right to vote nationwide and marking a major milestone in American democracy. On August 26, 1789, the French National Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, proclaiming the principles of liberty, equality, and individual rights at the heart of the French Revolution. Story of the day. Franklin Roosevelt understood earlier than most American politicians that the war in Europe was an existential threat to the United States. He believed, genuinely, deeply, from at least 1940 onward, that a Europe dominated by Nazi Germany would eventually threaten American security, American democracy, and the international order that American power depended on. He also faced a political reality that made direct action impossible. America in 1940 and 1941 was profoundly isolationist. The memory of the First World War, of young men sent to die in European trenches for causes that seemed in retrospect to have little to do with American interests, was still quite fresh. The America First movement, led by Charles Lindbergh and others, commanded enormous public support. Congress had passed a series of neutrality acts specifically designed to prevent America from being drawn into another European war. And Roosevelt had been reelected in 1940 partly on the promise that American boys were not going to be sent into any foreign wars. He meant to keep that promise. He also meant to get into the war, however. These two intentions coexisted in FDR's mind, and the tension between them shaped everything that followed. The Atlantic was where Roosevelt made his most direct moves toward undeclared war. Lend-Lease, signed in March of 1941, allowed Britain to receive American weapons and supplies on credit, effectively making America the arsenal of democracy and abandoning any pretense of true neutrality. American naval vessels began escorting British convoys partway across the Atlantic. In September of 1941, after the USS Greer was attacked by a German submarine, in an incident Roosevelt described to the public without mentioning that the Greer had been tracking the submarine and broadcasting its position to British forces, he issued a shoot on sight order against German and Italian warships in American defensive waters. American destroyers were now fighting an undeclared naval war against Germany. Germany chose not to declare war in response. Hitler did not want America fully in the conflict just yet. The Atlantic route to war was stalled, which brings us to the Pacific. The Pacific path to war was shaped by FDR's response to Japanese expansion in Asia. Japan's invasion of China, its occupation of French Indochina, and its alliance with Germany had made it, in American strategic thinking, part of the same threat as Nazi Germany. In July of 1941, after Japan moved into southern Indochina, Roosevelt froze Japanese assets in the United States and imposed an oil embargo. Japan imported 80% of its oil from the United States. The embargo was not a neutral act. It was, as most serious historians acknowledge, a pressure that Japan's military leadership would eventually feel compelled to respond to, one way or another. In November of 1941, Secretary of State Cordell Hull delivered what became known as the Hull Note, a set of demands requiring Japan to withdraw from China and Indochina in exchange for restoration of trade. The demands were, by most assessments, ones Japan could not accept without abandoning the entire strategic project its military had been pursuing for decades. Some argue Hull intended it, that the note was designed not as a genuine negotiating position, but as a final offer that Japan would reject, producing the state of war that Roosevelt needed. This is documented in the debates within the Roosevelt administration at the time. Hull told Secretary of War Henry Stimson that he had washed his hands of the matter and thrown it to the military. What Roosevelt knew before December 7th is the most explosive and most contested question in the entire debate. The United States had broken Japan's diplomatic codes, Operation Magic, and was reading Japanese diplomatic traffic through 1941. The traffic indicated with increasing clarity through November and early December that Japan was preparing a major military action. It indicated that Japan had set a deadline. If negotiations had not produced results by a certain date, war would certainly follow. What it did not specifically reveal was the target. American intelligence expected Japan to strike southward, at British Malaya, at the Dutch East Indies, at the Philippines. Pearl Harbor, the home base of the Pacific Fleet, was not the expected target. Three investigations, the Roberts Commission in 1942, the Joint Congressional Investigation in 1946, and subsequent declassified intelligence reviews, have produced conflicting conclusions about what was actually known, when it was known, and whether the commanders at Pearl Harbor received adequate warning. The most defensible historical verdict, based on the available evidence, is this: Roosevelt maneuvered the United States toward war deliberately and skillfully, using policies he knew were likely to produce conflict with Japan. He did not specifically know that Pearl Harbor would be attacked on December 7th, however. He may have known a Japanese attack somewhere was imminent and chosen not to act in ways that might have prevented it, because American entry into the war on the back of a Japanese attack was the outcome that FDR needed. What he knew and when he knew it precisely remains, despite decades of investigation, generally unresolved. The historian Gordon Prange, who spent 37 years studying Pearl Harbor, concluded that the attack was not a deliberately allowed disaster, but rather the consequence of intelligence failures, institutional miscommunication, and the fog of a rapidly developing crisis. The historian Robert Stinnett, in his 2000 book Day of Deceit, argued that FDR followed a deliberate 8 step plan to provoke Japan into firing the first shot, and that key intelligence about the approaching fleet was withheld from the Pacific from the Pearl Harbor commanders. Both men had access to declassified records, and the two historians reached opposite conclusions. This is not because one was sloppy and the other rigorous. It is because the evidence genuinely supports both readings, depending on which gaps you fill with what inferences. What the historical record does establish, without any serious dispute, is this: Franklin Roosevelt believed the United States had to enter the Second World War. He pursued policies he knew were likely to produce that result. He was not a passive bystander to events that overwhelmed him. He was an active agent who shaped the conditions that produced Pearl Harbor, even if the specific attack on December 7th was not something that he engineered or foresaw in its precise form. Whether that makes him a statesman who did what was necessary to stop fascism, or a president who manipulated his country into war while promising not to, depends on where you stand on the question of whether the war needed to be entered. Most historians who have studied that question believe the war indeed needed to be entered, and most of them believe Roosevelt was right, even if they disagree about his methods. The honest answer to this episode's title question, did FDR bring America into World War II on purpose? Well, I guess the answer is yes, with the full understanding that purpose is a complicated word for a complicated man in a complicated moment. The History Brief. The following is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation series episode in a conversation with the world renowned author of historical fiction, Robert Harris, about his latest book, Agrippa. And just a reminder that the full video of the interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms.
I do feel myself to be a time traveler. I like to land on a foreign shore in a different era and learn all I can about it and turn it into a book. And it's been a great pleasure, actually. Been going on now for what, 34 years, I think, since Fatherland came out. 17
So,
novels now.
when you do this travel, if we frame it that way, are there any places where you feel the most at home when it comes to traveling with your books?
Well, I do like. I've now. This is my Agrippa is my fifth Roman novel, so I think that that is a place where I do feel particularly at home. Ever since Pompeii, I spent 2 years researching Pompeii. I learned a lot about Roman life, customs, and when I came to the end of that book, I had been a political journalist. I'd always wanted to write a political novel. I thought, why don't I write about Cicero in the ancient world, ancient Rome, and do it as a kind of West Wing on the Tiber, a political procedural. So that was another 3 books. Took me about 10 years in all in order to write the 3 parts of the Cicero trilogy, and now I've come on with Agrippa. So I'd say that is a particular favourite of mine. But I have done other periods: 19th century France, 20th century England, and indeed 17th century America in active oblivion. So I've been all over the place.
I love that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. Also, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
We learned how to love dogs from the dogs that loved us and waited for us to get home from school. They were the dogs that raised us. We returned the love with Pedigree dog food. It was good then, and it's better now. Every bowl has 100% complete nutrition, supporting 6 health essentials, and now it includes Vitamin Good Bites, a nutrient boost your dog will love. Pedigree. Good then, better now.